Green industry best management practices: reduce water pollution and conserve water. We do this by utilizing appropriate site design and plant selection, sound landscape maintenance practices, appropriate rates and methods of applying fertilizer and irrigation, and integrated pest management to minimize pests and apply chemicals only when appropriate. Hi, I'm Susan. In this video, you'll learn about fertilizers, the facts, functions, and figuring amounts to apply. Using landscape fertilizers properly can help promote healthy and beautiful landscapes and discourage pests while minimally impacting the environment, including water quality. Applying the correct amount at the right time is a green industry's best management practice. Landscape plants, just like us, require nutrients to survive. Many of the nutrients that are needed for a healthy landscape are naturally occurring in the soil, but often these need to be supplemented in the form of fertilizers to provide the optimum amounts for plant health. Healthy plants are better able to compete with weeds and tend to recover from pest problems and environmental stresses such as drought, cold weather, or high wind. Even native plants, when planted in residential and commercial landscapes, may require additional nutrients. This is because the planting site often has altered soil conditions from where the native plant originated. Chris with John Deere Landscapes is going to share some of the things he discusses about fertilizers with commercial clients.
One of the first questions we ask our customers whenever they come in is where would they be applying the fertilizer and how many thousand square feet would they be covering that day. We also recommend that a soil test be done so that we can accurately give correct recommendations on what they would be applying it to.
When you make decisions about fertilization, you need to have a basic understanding about a number of things. This includes types of nutrients, types of fertilizers, soil properties, how to calculate the right amount of fertilizer to apply, application methods, and application timing. You also need to have an understanding of the types of nutrients the landscapes and turf grass that you're taking care of need. Landscape plants and turf grass have different nutrient needs. First, I'll talk about nutrients. There are 16 elements needed for plant growth. These can be divided into 3 groups. The first group, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, plants get from air and water. The other 13 come from the soil or fertilizer applications. The second group, plants need in large quantities and are called macronutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are used in relatively large quantities. Calcium, magnesium, and sulfur are used in somewhat smaller quantities. The third group, plants need in very small amounts and are called micronutrients. These include iron, manganese, boron, copper, molybdenum, zinc, and nickel. You can tell what nutrients a plant needs or doesn't need by the unhealthy way it looks. Nutrient imbalances produce visible symptoms that you can learn to recognize. Let's talk about soil. Soil provides that basic support structure for plants and turf grass. Knowing the characteristics of the soil on the site you're working on is very important. Whether or not your fertilizers are going to work properly depends on a number of things, and that includes the soil texture, the organic material content, the pH, and the drainage. Texture is the amount of sand, silt, and clay that makes up soil. Sand is a large particle, so sandy soils drain faster. Silt and clay are smaller particles, so they hold more water and nutrients. An ideal soil for growing is about 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. The soil in these jars were collected from typical sites in our area, and as you can see, once the soil has settled, none of them are ideal for growing. Soil drainage is really important to the health of most plants. When soil becomes saturated with water, roots are injured and can rot. Fertilizer uptake is limited and plants suffer. Poor drainage is the #1 cause of landscape problems. Organic matter improves the ability of a soil to hold nutrients and may provide nutrients as it decomposes. It will increase a sandy soil's water-holding ability and increase aeration of silt and clay. pH measures the acidity or alkalinity of the soil. Measured on a scale of 0 to 14, values below 7 are acidic and above 7 are alkaline. Most plants grow well between 6 and 7. When the pH is below 4.5, iron and manganese are very soluble, which means they dissolve in water easily and are absorbed by plants in large amounts and are toxic to plants. When the pH is too high, the same elements precipitate or become a solid, which then can't be taken in by the plant and result in nutritional deficiencies. At low pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and magnesium are less available for plants. Different plants and different varieties of turfgrass perform better within certain pH ranges. Knowing the pH of your soil and the pH range for the plant is essential to keeping plants healthy. When you're putting together a fertilizer management plan for the properties you're working on, always have a soil test done first. The soil test report will give you the soil pH and provide the main macronutrient levels. The report will also give you recommendations to correct imbalances. But nitrogen levels aren't measured by soil tests. This is because nitrogen is very mobile. In warm weather, it can volatilize, which means it turns into a gas. It's also broken down by natural bacteria in the soil, or it can leach or run off when there's heavy rain or over-irrigation. Instead, recommendations are given for the nitrogen that's needed by plants during the growing season. Finally, I'll move on to fertilizers. A fertilizer is any substance that provides corrective measures to the soil, controls soil acidity or alkalinity, or contains one or more recognized plant nutrients and promotes plant growth. Fertilizers used on lawns usually have higher amounts of nitrogen, and they are generally applied more frequently than other landscape fertilizers. This is because turfgrass needs nitrogen to establish and grow. Nitrogen promotes new growth, which is tender and very attractive to many pests, and can promote weed growth if applied at the wrong time. Pest problems increase the need for pesticide applications. Any excess nitrogen may just leach or run off into waterways. Leaching is the movement of nutrients and contaminants downward into groundwater. Runoff is the movement of nutrients and contaminants over ground surfaces to ponds, lakes, rivers, bays, and other water bodies. This is why it is so important for you to apply only the right amount of fertilizer that turfgrass and plants can utilize, and at the right time. There are many fertilizer formulations, but only two forms of nitrogen in fertilizers, either quick release or slow release. Quick release means that the nitrogen is available immediately to plants. Quick release is more subject to leaching due to rain or over-irrigation. Slow release fertilizers release nitrogen slowly over time, providing a continual feeding for perhaps 60 to 90 days or more. The timing depends on the release mechanism for the nitrogen and environmental conditions. Remember Chris from earlier? He's going to show us some of those fertilizer blends that are available.
There's hundreds of different fertilizers that we offer. Some of the examples of the different types are the 1608 fertilizer, which is 30% slow release, 3% iron. This 24011, which is a 50% slow release fertilizer with 6% iron. And one of my favorites, this 20010, 100% slow release fertilizer with 4% iron. We also offer a 24211 with 6% iron, which is a 50% slow release fertilizer for times where phosphorus is required from your soil sample.
Lawns fertilized with slow-release fertilizers tend to grow more evenly, while lawns fertilized with quick-release fertilizers tend to have flushes of growth, be more susceptible to pests and diseases, and need more frequent mowing. So why is that important? Well, our lawns need nutrients during the active growing season, which in Central Florida is between April and October. Much of that occurs during our rainy season. Remember, quick-release fertilizers are available immediately, so frequent or heavy rain or over-irrigation will leach the nutrients below the plant root zones before it can be absorbed by the plant or grass. Because nitrogen is very mobile, it can readily leach through the soil to groundwater or run off the soil surface to waterways. Phosphorus adsorbs to soil, which means that it actually attaches to the soil particles and is carried with the soil as erosion occurs. When the soil reaches waterways, the phosphorus is released and contributes to water pollution. So how do you know how much fertilizer to apply? It requires calculating. That's right, math. But a simple calculation goes a long way to assure you're applying the correct amount of fertilizer. When you calculate how much fertilizer to apply, nitrogen and phosphorus are the two most important nutrients. But when applied improperly, nitrogen and phosphorus can contribute to water pollution that may result in harmful algae growth, algae blooms, or increased invasive aquatic vegetation. Green Industry's Best Management Practices prescribes applying no more than 1 pound of slow-release nitrogen or no more than 1/2 pound of quick-release nitrogen at any one application. Research has shown that turfgrass is able to utilize all or practically all of the slow-release fertilizer applied when applied at the rate of no more than 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per application. Also, turfgrass is able to utilize all or practically all of the quick-release fertilizer when applied at a rate of no more than 1/2 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per application. Now that you have all this information, how do you know how much fertilizer to apply to deliver 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet? Let's look at a fertilizer label and run through an example calculation. This fertilizer has a guaranteed analysis of 15% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, and 15% potassium. It also contains 5% iron. The nitrogen content is 50% slow release. You can tell this because the label shows that half, or 7.5%, of the 15% nitrogen source is stabilized with a copolymer. Use the following formula to determine how many pounds of a fertilizer is needed to apply 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. 100 is divided by the percent nitrogen, which for this fertilizer gives us 6.7 pounds. So 6.7 pounds of this 15015 fertilizer is needed to deliver 1 pound of nitrogen over 1,000 square feet. If you have 3,000 square feet of area, then you multiply 6.7 times 3, which means that you need 20 pounds of fertilizer to cover that 3,000 square feet. If you're using quick-release fertilizer, remember you can only apply up to 1/2 pound of nitrogen at any one application, so apply at 1/2 of the rate calculated. Fertilizers should also contain a ratio of nitrogen to phosphorus of no less than 4:1. This means that there should always be 4 times more nitrogen than phosphorus. Otherwise, you must calculate application rates based on applying phosphorus at no more than 1/4 pound per application and no more than 1/2 pound per year. It's just so much easier to make sure that your ratios are correct. It's that easy. For more information on figuring the correct amount of fertilizer to apply, see my fact sheet on figuring fertilizers. Now that you have all this information, be sure that you follow the application rules. Water turfgrass after fertilization with 1/4 inch of water to wash the fertilizer off grass blades and to the root zone. Never apply fertilizers when it's raining or when the forecast expects 2 inches or more of rain within 36 hours. Never apply fertilizers within 24 hours or during a flood, tropical storm, or hurricane warning or watch. When applying fertilizer near a water body, do not apply within 3 feet of the water body. Be sure to check your county or local fertilizer ordinance, as it may require a greater than 3-foot ring of responsibility around water bodies. Make sure your broadcast or rotary spreader has a deflector shield. Immediately clean up any fertilizer deposited onto impervious surfaces and use if possible at the site. Never wash or blow fertilizer into storm drains.